guys, I'm back again with a book review, and this one is a trilogy. It is the Liveship Traders Trilogy. The Liveship Traders Trilogy. I was going to do a video for each book and like go into detail about it, but the first one I tried was like 20 minutes long, so instead I'm going to do kind of an overall review with no spoilers, because that will be quicker. So if you don't know what the Liveship Traders Trilogy is, it's basically the second trilogy of the Elderling Chronicles by Robin Hobb. They all kind of take place in the same world, but in different like areas, and there's different characters. I read the Farseer trilogy a couple of years ago, and like I enjoyed them, but I honestly can't say I really remember the story. I can't even remember many of the characters. I remember Fitz, obviously, because he is the main character. And I remember the Fool because I absolutely adored him so much I have a tattoo of him. Other than that, I can't really remember the characters and I can't really remember the story. But these characters in this trilogy will stay with me forever. Like, especially one particular one, which I will get into later. But for now, I'm just going to do like an overall review. So the premise of the story is that there is a ship called the Vivacia. She is a live ship, which basically is what it says on the tin. It is a ship that is alive. The figurehead moves and she can like feel things through a wood. It's really cool. There are a few different live ships throughout the trilogy, but she's like the main one. So basically her captain Ephron Vestrit, he dies, and his youngest daughter Althea thinks that she is going to inherit the ship because she has been sailing with him ever since she was a kid, and it is like the only logical thing to do. But of course that doesn't happen, and instead he gives it to his oldest daughter's husband, Kyle Haven, who is the worst human being on the planet. So of course that doesn't go well. And basically throughout the trilogy, Althea is trying to get her ship back, and that is the thread that ties all the books together. But obviously a lot more happens because these are chunky books. The books are written in third person perspective, and there are several different narrations, which I have realised that I much prefer than first person. And it works for this because there are several different ships going around at the same time. There's also people on different lands, and it's just a very kind of expansive story. Like there's a lot going on in different places. The issue though is that sometimes you get stuck in a character's perspective that you don't really like or just don't find entertaining, and that was the problem with the third book. The first like 500 pages are dedicated more to the part of the story that I am less interested in, which is why it took me so long to get through that, and I was tempted to just put it down and not read it again, but I powered through. I'm going to be really honest, I just kind of like skim read those chapters until I got to like page 600, and then it got good. Honestly, like the climax of this trilogy is like the best ending of a series that I've read in a very long time, and the fact that it's not even like technically the end of the series, because like the chronicles are like, I think there's like 2 or 3 more trilogies after this, so it's kind of like it's a good ending, but also it's very exciting because I wonder if these characters are going to turn up in later trilogies. It's very much hinted that one particular character is going to show up, but I don't know about the others. But that's something that I'm very excited about. This trilogy also does something that I absolutely adore when it happens in books or shows or films, is when there's different stories going on at different places, and then they kind of come together and the characters meet each other, and it's so good. It happens at the end of the first book, which is just so rewarding, and then the final climax at the end of the trilogy is, I've already said, but it's amazing. So that is a good thing that comes from multiple narrations, and it works so well in this. My favourite character throughout the trilogy was definitely Wintro. He is 14 at the start, and he kind of grows into like a young man towards the end. He very much seems to be like the Fitz of the trilogy, because his life starts out one way at the beginning of the trilogy and then it turns into something completely different. But he was a very well grounded character, and considering he's so young. He kind of gets taught how to be a man from a very young age. I also loved Althea. She is a very well written, strong female character. There's a lot of them in this trilogy, which I think was lacking in the Farseer trilogy. To be perfectly honest, I can't even really remember any of the female characters. There was like a queen or a princess from what I remember, and she was alright. I remember Molly, and I absolutely despised her. But in this trilogy, you've got quite a lot of good, strong female characters. You've got Althea, you've got Etta, you've got Amber, you've got Jack. Jack is like a character who is like not really that important, but every time she's in a scene, she just steals the scene, and I absolutely love it. So overall, I gave all of these books 5 stars on Goodreads, because even though like the third one took me long to read because I didn't particularly like that perspective that I was stuck in, like that was just my personal opinion. Like it had nothing to do with the writing. Like the writing wasn't bad and the story wasn't bad. It was a lot of meetings and nothing really happening, which to be honest is realistic. And when you've got loads of different groups of people trying to like sell something, like nothing happens. So yeah, 5 stars throughout the trilogy. It's incredible. It's better than the Farseer trilogy. I am a bit skeptical going into the Tawny Man trilogy because I know it's back to Fitz. And I don't know if I want to go back to first person narration. But we shall see. Okay, now I want to talk specifically about one particular scene and one particular character. The scene it's no spoilers, but trigger warning for if you're going to read this trilogy. There are a lot of scenes with sexual assault in, or even if it's not on page, it's like mentioned. And there's one particular scene that like really made me like put the book down and be like, whoa. And it is a scene with Malta. She is Wintrow's sister, younger sister. And she starts off in the trilogy, I think she's like 12 or 13, and she just wants to be seen as a woman. She wants to wear like women's dresses, and she wants men to swoon over her, and she's very boy crazy, which is very realistic for a girl her age. And her mum is very much dead set against it. She's like, no, you're a child, you need to dress like a child, you need to act like a child, and it causes a lot of conflict in the first book. And then I think it's the third book that this happens. She's on a ship. She's basically alone. She's feeling very vulnerable, feeling very unsafe. The crew on the ship don't speak the same language, but they're kind of like touching her and jeering at her, and like kind of like you don't need to speak the same language to know what they're saying, if you kind of know what I mean. And there's a scene where she is on the deck and she's just trying to get back to her cabin, and she gets grabbed and she falls, and she turns round and she sees that it is a handsome young man, and she is instantly happy, and she's instantly like, oh, phew. And she kind of goes to like expecting him to help her up, but instead he pins her down. Luckily she gets away, but this scene really hit me especially because it was Malta, and she was the character that just wanted male attention, and then she started getting it and realised that is really not what you want. Because there are scenes when the female character doesn't get away, but for some reason this particular one was like really hard hitting. And the fact that like she saw that he was a handsome guy and instantly thought, well, he's not gonna hurt me, and that's not the case. Like, any guy could hurt you, basically, is the point of that. But yeah, it really got to me, that scene. And you can see throughout the rest of the book that she has changed since that happened to her. But yeah, there's a lot of scenes like that, but they're done well. Not that I want to read stuff like that, but yeah, it makes you think. So the character I want to talk about is Captain Kenneth. He is the captain of the pirates. From the get-go, you kind of get the feeling that there's something missing. He's kind of holding back, and it's done very purposefully, that you know there's a reason behind this, but you don't actually get to know the reason until the third book, which is the reason you need to carry on. Like, even though the first bit's a bit boring, like, the payoff is good. He is a morally incredibly great character, but he's the type of character that I am just in awe with and kind of jealous about, that someone is able to write a character that good. He's kind of on the same level for me as Bruce Robertson in Filth by Irvine Welsh. I think I read that book about 10 years ago, and he lives in my head rent-free. Like, that character, like, horrific person, like, stands for everything that I'm against, but I empathised with him. And it's the same thing with Kenneth. Like, the things he did, like, especially towards the end, were but I have a soft spot for him, and especially when you find out his story, it's incredible. So yeah, if this trilogy is like on your TBR list, bump it up to the top. Like, I was gonna say, like, if you're a fan of dragons, if you're a fan of Robin Hobb, if you're a fan of pirates, like, read this trilogy, but like, I'm pretty sure you either already have or it's in your TBR list. So yes, just read it for Kenneth. He deserves I don't even want to say respect, because him as a person, but him as a character, as a written thing, needs respect. So yeah, I think I've wrapped it up. This is probably going to be a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. But overall, 5 stars. Give it a read.